that tapping can help your emotional and mental health. You can relieve stress, let go of anger and resentment. But what about how we want to feel more joy, more energy? Today, you are going to discover how to use tapping, not just to let things go, but to bring things in, and how to use tapping to really supercharge your own health. To show us how, we are speaking to Dr. Dawson Church. Let me tell you a bit about Dawson. He is an award-winning science writer with 3 best-selling books: The Genie in Your Genes, Mind to Matter, and Bliss Brain. Dawson has conducted dozens of clinical trials and founded the National Institute for Integrative Healthcare to promote groundbreaking new treatments. Its largest program, the Veteran Stress Project, has offered free treatments to over 20,000 veterans with PTSD over the past decade. Dawson shares how to apply these health and performance breakthroughs at EFTuniverse.com, one of the largest alternative medicine sites on the web. I'm thrilled he's here. Welcome, Dawson.
Jessica, as always, it's a pure delight.
It really is. I love speaking with you because you bring the joy and you bring the research. And
the two reinforce each other.
Yeah, the joy and the research. I love it. So when it comes to tapping, like I mentioned before, it's pretty obvious that it can help our mental health. But when it comes to our physical health, why is it that someone can do tapping throughout the summit and actually have physical improvements?
This is really underappreciated, Jessica, just how profound the effect of our emotional states especially are on our bodies. So our thoughts affect our bodies, but if you have thought backed by strong emotion, it has a dramatic effect on the body. In one study, we found that getting an hour of tapping by a skilled practitioner, this is somebody with a highly trained practitioner, produced changes in 72 genes that have to do with cell metabolism, how well your cells are functioning, genes that have to do with the conduction of signals in the memory and learning centers of your brain, genes that suppress breast cancer, throat cancer, prostate cancer, bowel cancer, and several other cancers, genes that help protect your skin from ultraviolet radiations, genes that help produce more stem cells. All of these genes were being regulated by just 1 hour of tapping. So we're just now starting to map exactly what happens in the body, and those changes are profound, from drops in stress neurotransmitters like norepinephrine and stress hormones like cortisol, to changes in brain waves and the whole way your nervous system functions. And so when you regulate your mind, when you regulate your mood, regulate your brain and all the emotions that your neural network's processing, that produces a radical effect on your body, and you'll literally feel yourself getting lighter, not just emotionally, but physically, and in your felt sense of who you are inside your skin as well.
It's incredible. And I hear it a lot. I hear people tapping along with the summit and then suddenly saying, I'm sleeping better, or my back doesn't hurt so much. I want to break down a bit how that happens. And then we're really going to talk about really boosting, because it's not just about letting things go. We want to move towards more energy and more vitality. But when it comes to tapping, can you tell us a little bit about the mechanism what is happening that is creating these different things? So we know that it impacts genes. We know that it impacts cortisol. When someone is asking, well, how do you explain that?
Yeah, that takes a while to figure out in science. If you look at the lag between us figuring out that a treatment works and figuring out how a treatment works, the gap can be a long time. For penicillin, it was 35 years between discovering that penicillin worked to knowing how penicillin worked. And so with aspirin, many other common drugs, that's the same lag. With EFT, the same thing. It's been about a 20-year lag between discovering how well EFT works and discovering how it works. And so we know from research now that EFT works on many dimensions. One of those dimensions is brain waves. And in several studies, we've used either MRIs or high-resolution EEGs to study people's brain waves and also which parts of the brain are active. And these are fascinating because the way our brain conducts information is as energy. These are signals traveling along neural pathways. And if we're signaling differently, the way our brain shows up on a brain scan looks very different. So some of the mechanisms are, first of all, brain waves. And brain waves are profound in how they affect the rest of our body. In some of the really detailed research in my book, Mind to Matter, I look at the effect of a wave like theta waves, which are between 4 and 8 cycles per second. So your nerve cells are firing 4 times a second, and those are communicating with other nerve cells elsewhere in your body and brain, also firing 4 cycles per second. And so we find that in that band of theta brain waves, and we see this amplifying with EFT. I have some amazing images of people, and they start tapping. One woman, for example, we put her up on stage at a big conference. We had her hooked up to an EEG, and then the whole audience could see this giant EEG behind her. And we picked somebody we thought would have a fairly minor issue to work on and wouldn't be much of a challenge for the therapist working with her. Turns out that she had been the victim of childhood sexual abuse, and it came out right on stage, right in the middle of the session. And we saw her theta waves, that healing wave of theta, 4 to 8 cycles per second, go from being fairly narrow, fairly small, to nothing at all. It just attenuated that brainwave. When we tapped with her, absolutely amazing to watch in front of this whole huge audience as those theta brainwaves got really large. As she released the trauma, as she released the emotional response to that childhood abuse, her brainwaves changed. And theta, that frequency of theta is associated with things like more stem cells in our body, with the repair of cartilage, with the repair of bone cells in our body. It also helps our nerve cells regenerate, especially in the memory and learning centers of the brain. So just that one band is being increased by EFT. So brainwaves is one mechanism. I mentioned genes earlier. That's another mechanism. We know that our hormones and neurotransmitters, these neurochemicals, are shifting in our bodies. So this whole array of changes is happening all at the same time. Not just one thing, but on all these dimensions. And the cool thing about it is that subjectively, you just feel good. You mentioned back pain going away, or people sleeping better, or just their digestive upsets go away. And one of the cool things about this is that when we do research, we also measure those kinds of shifts in people. So we're measuring genes, we're measuring hormones, we're measuring brain waves, neurotransmitters, and we're measuring mood. How good do you feel, and how good do you feel in your body? It's called somatization. How good do you feel in your body? And what we find is that you just feel way better in your body as all these changes are happening. What that means is that when you feel better in your body, all these changes are happening. All these cool things are happening with brain waves and neurotransmitters and genes. So the fact that you feel good of necessity means that all these things are happening. And we now no longer have to hook you up to all those pieces of equipment to read those parts of your body. We know that if you just feel good, that feeling of homeostasis, a high level of well-being in your body, that feel-good feeling literally means that all of these things are shifting. So go with just that feeling of well-being and let that be your guide to whether EFT is working, and you're likely to find yourself feeling much, much, much better and have a much more fun home to live in the form of this wonderful human body.
Yes, absolutely. And with that, let's talk about energy for a moment, because you're talking about all these good feelings and your body feeling good, and you have this experience and suddenly you do have more energy in life. And I think that's something a lot of us are craving, is just having more energy in our day. Can you talk about set points when it comes to energy and how we can have that intention to use tapping to really increase the energy that we have throughout our day?
Jessica, you notice old people slowing down and having less energy. And what I've been so struck by is people who are practicing tapping for months, years, decades, they have lots of energy as they grow old. They have much more energy than the average population. And you can measure health in geriatric people, elderly people, by one metric. There's one metric that's a proxy for general physical health, and that's walk speed. People who are 80 years old, if they are walking fast, that means, generally speaking, everything else is working well in their bodies. But what really makes me sad, Jessica, is in my workshops, when I have either live workshops or virtual workshops, I have a lot of young people who show up. They're in their 20s. Maybe it's a woman in her who's 22 years old or a man who's 28. And they're telling me they have no energy. They have low energy. I feel so sad because, I mean, you can imagine a 95-year-old saying they have no energy or someone pushing 100. But when you have no energy at the age of 22 or 28, your options are so limited in your life. And so I really am focused on that metric of energy, both in elderly people and in young people. And that often means they're having mitochondrial dysfunction. Mitochondria run on this chemical called ATP. They are the powerhouses of our body. If our mitochondria are functioning at peak, and our neurons in our brain have enormous numbers of these powerhouses in each neuron, if we're functioning at peak, if our mitochondria are at peak, we have boundless energy. We just get up in the morning and we are just ready to pour all that energy into a productive and happy day. But if you wake up in the morning and you're feeling slow and sluggish, it may get a little bit better over the course of the day, and it may not. And so many people are in that band of mitochondrial dysfunction, pretty low levels of mitochondrial function, and they don't have energy. What happens too is now, there are two kinds of energy here. We're talking about physical energy right now, feeling physically energetic. There's also our energy, we measure our energy field. And so our body's energy field, like a giant magnet, North Pole up here, South Pole down here, and that field can be measured 15 feet, 3 meters away from your body. And so that energy we measure with various devices, and then we measure that energy in the form of your brain waves. Your brain waves also are easily measurable as energy. And when you shift energy on the brain level and the level of the electromagnetic system of the body, which we do with pressure on acupoints, when that energy shifts, it can unlock the physical energy of those mitochondria in your body. So when I said that gene study showed increased cell metabolism, that means that our mitochondria are utilizing that ATP chemical better and is raising our levels of energy. And you often find people, they arrive at the workshops and they're low energy, they aren't feeling that great. They spend a week tapping. Their cortisol goes down, their noradrenaline goes down, their immunoglobulins, their immune system has a dramatic shift to making them far more immune and far more immune markers circulating in their blood and their saliva. And then when that shift occurs, they'll feel a burst of energy. One lady, I tapped, not with her, I tapped with a woman next to her. She was in a big room at Kripalu Institute a few years back, and she was in her 70s and had degenerative hip disease. And she was walking really slowly and painfully. She had very limited mobility, very limited energy. We all fell in love with this woman. She was such a sweet human being, but she walked with such pain. And so I worked not with her, but I had her tapping while I worked with the woman sitting next to her. And I worked with the woman sitting next to her, who was much younger, on being disrespected by men, one man in particular. And we worked on this instant of being disrespected by this man. And so the young woman's numbers, her emotional triggering, went way down. And everyone else was tapping along with her. It was a beautiful session. Everyone went to lunch and went about their day. Later on, I was standing with a group of students in the hallway at Kripalu, and we saw this elderly lady just dashing down the hallway. It's like, what's going on there? And she said, I feel great.
Wow.
More energy. So that's what happens both for young people and for old people.
Well, what's so interesting about that, too, is that it wasn't that she was focusing on tapping on energy. She was doing all this other work, and you suddenly get this side effect. So what you're showing us are side effects, because for some of us, just feeling better about a conflict in the past is enough. For me, I mean, that's great. But then to know that your body is doing all these things, it's just really incredible. And it makes you realize that as you age and also as you're recovering from things, whether it's surgery or being sick, how important it is to be in these states to help your body recover. Can you talk a little bit about that, the recovery aspect of things? So if someone is recovering from something, how can tapping help them with everything else they're doing with their doctor? Because it feels like this is such a great thing to add to what we're already doing.
Well, I'll tell you a story about that from my own life. And that is that I was in the country of Panama just before the pandemic. I had an accident and I hurt my leg. And so I kind of was hobbling around, hobbled out of the airport, managed to make it back on the plane, flew back to the US, was teaching at 1440 Multiversity for a week, teaching EFT there. And so I was hobbling around there. People worked on me a little bit, but energy worked on me, but didn't get much better. And then I was flying straight from Multiversity to Hawaii for a month. Flew to Hawaii and was so much pain there. I just basically collapsed. And my wife took me to the hospital, and they found that I had a compromised Achilles tendon. Later on, I got back to the U.S., didn't realize how serious it was. Still a month later, got an MRI, and there was just a big 4-inch or 10-centimeter gap where my Achilles tendon used to be. And so what did I do then? I just tapped. I tapped all the way through the ordeal. I tapped when I got the diagnosis, and I saw that image, MRI image, of just this big empty gap where my Achilles tendon was supposed to be. I was also honestly a little bit miffed at my doctor because I emailed my doctor all along from the first day, and he never ordered the MRI. Not until 6 weeks later did I even get an MRI and get a good diagnosis. So I had resentment there, maybe a little bit of an edge there. I tapped on that. I then had to have an emergency operation. And I actually got into the hospital the day before they shut down all surgeries because they were preparing for COVID. So I got in there just before that happened, and I got an Achilles tendon replaced. And so you see, there are pictures of me. I asked people in our EFT Universe community to intend for me that I have successful surgery and that I have a really quick recovery. And so going into surgery, going into anesthesia, I was tapping and visualizing this result. I had this powerful visualization. I had hundreds of people tapping and visualizing for me, and I encourage you to share with people. Share your issues on EFT Universe, on our website, on the Tapping Solution side, share them on Facebook, share them with prayer lines. Make sure you have as much emotional support as possible going into something difficult like that. And then there's a photograph my wife took when I got back from surgery that day. I'm laying in bed, and I'm just basically completely blissed out. I'm smiling. I'm just feeling so incredibly, I'm high. I'm feeling so wonderful. I just had major surgery. And they gave me this big bottle of pills and said, make sure you take your painkillers, Dawson Church, make sure you stick with the painkillers. Don't tough it out. Take these pills with any sign of pain. And the pill bottle is still probably somewhere in my medicine cabinet, unopened. I didn't need it. I recovered fine. I recovered so quickly. My next visualization was I'll go back for the post-surgical visit, and the doctors will be astonished how quickly I'm healing. And I remember them taking off the cast, and the doctor said, I'm astonished at how quickly you're healing. So we really can do a huge amount for our well-being. You want to use tapping going into any difficult time in your life physically, if you get a diagnosis, especially a serious diagnosis. Imagine getting a heart disease diagnosis or a cancer diagnosis. There are people whose cortisol rises so high, they actually have what's called diagnosis shock. They get that diagnosis and they just panic, they flip out. And now you're producing all these adverse neurochemicals. So tap on your diagnosis. I literally tap on some of my genes. I know the names of some genes I want to shift the expression of, and I tap on those. And then you tap on the whole phase of recovery and visualizing a good recovery and a good life. So all of those phases, going into a medical condition, getting diagnosed, making a treatment plan, complying with what your caregivers recommend, recovery, visualizing recovery, having social support, having a group of people around you who are tapping and intending for you. Each of those phases, you can apply tapping.
Yes. We all know it. I mean, we've all had the experience of being in a doctor's office and feeling stressed or scared, or at least most of us have. And now we're beginning to understand that those feelings, though natural, are having it's chemical. But something's happening inside of your body when you feel that way. And so it does make sense that if you can feel confident and strong throughout a healing journey, you're going to get better results. It's important to remember, and it's not and or, it's not do this instead of that. It's let's use it all. Work with your doctor. And also, if your doctor is on your nerves because they're saying you don't need an MRI and you're mad at them, well, that is creating something physically in your body, and that's something to work through. So I think this is such a great reminder and so interesting and relatable, because we've all had these feelings going through our healing journey. All right, I want to talk about moving towards, right? So we talk about how tapping can help us with recovery, but if we know we want more, like kind of like an athlete is like, I want to just get into better shape. How do we get into better shape with tapping? How do we use this intention to really get more energy and to, just expand in that way?
Well, you mentioned set points earlier, Jessica, and we all have set points. And those set points are emotional, those set points are hormonal, those set points are brain waves. And so often people have a certain configuration of brain waves, and that's just the way they function in that box of those possibilities. And in reality, they could be experiencing things way above that box. So we see that in terms of pleasure, for example, how much pleasure you allow yourself. There are people who allow themselves a little bit of pleasure and then they shut down. Pain tolerance usually is within a very specific window, high and low. So there are these set points in all these parts of our lives, including our hormones and neurotransmitters. And we often don't allow ourselves, for example, joy neurotransmitters. There are people I watch in workshops and they smile, but they don't really laugh deeply and heartily. And so they've got a set point for joy. They'll allow themselves this amount of joy, and that's it. They'll allow themselves this amount of love, and that's it. They'll allow themselves this amount of health, and that's it. And I remember working with people in a workshop just this past week, and they were saying things like, I have no sense of direction. I'm no good with money. Really? Those are set points, and we need to challenge them. So whenever you hear yourself saying a self-limiting belief like that, challenge it, figure out what's down below, and tap it away so you can let go of that set point. Because we human beings are capable of infinite amounts of love and happiness and well-being, and we may as well claim that birthright rather than staying locked in that box. So you want to question those things. If you want to really move into optimal states of mind, optimal states of health, optimal states mentally and spiritually and emotionally, then those states are accessible to us. We have a whole network in our brains called the Enlightenment Network. It has 4 subcircuits, and tapping literally can help you shut down all of the barriers to those elevated states and activate that Enlightenment Network. And then if you want to get better physically and raise your set point, for example, for physical vibrance and just physically feeling really good and excelling physically, bursting past your set points and limitations, then you visualize those, you imagine those. But I recommend people imagine them not in the future, because the way the brain works is really interesting. The part that handles working memory and the part that handles future visualization are the same. And so what you want to do is visualize yourself there already. Like I'm about to go on a 3-month meditation retreat to Hawaii. I just take myself offline for 3 months every year, go and surf and scuba dive and do all kinds of fun things. Usually bring in a bunch of friends as well. We just have a blast for 3 months, doing a lot of meditation, a lot of just really deep exploration. And I come back three months later feeling wonderful. So I want to have that great experience. So I'm not visualizing having it in the future. I'm visualizing being back here in my office and having had the experience. Now to my brain, it's a fact. And so you want to, say, develop your body in a certain way. You want to have a youthful body, or you want to develop your muscles, or you want to develop a high level of vibrance. What you do is you move yourself to the point in the future where you've already accomplished that and look back on the past. I just spent a little bit of time journaling, and I journaled and I put myself into the future a couple of years, and I described what had happened in the previous couple of years, even though it hasn't happened yet. So it's powerful to do that. And then you also, when you do that, what's going to happen is when you have an aspiration, all the parts of self, all the components of your personality that disagree with that and that keep your set points in place are going to pop up and say, I don't think so. And in EFT, we call those tail enders. In fact, at some point, we need to do a whole program on tail enders, because those tail enders are the real affirmation. Those tail enders are what has the real energy. So when you make that affirmation, you notice the tail enders saying, in your dreams. You'll have that body in your dreams. You'll have that energy level in your dreams. You'll never reach the heights you aspire to. And then we find the origins early in childhood of those tail enders, and we tap those events away. When we tap those events away, that liberates all the energy further in our timeline, our childhood, our early adulthood, and it then reduces our opposition and all of the energy in the tail enders to our goals right now. So healing the past literally heals the present. And you want to focus on what you want, and then imagine yourself there, and then tap away all the obstacles between where you are today and the lessons and limitations you learned, how you got those set points in the past.
That's an amazing process. We're going to put that in the workbook as well. I mean, what comes to mind is I'm in my 30s, and I look back at moments of when I was in my teens and 20s, and I am healthier by far than I ever was as a teenager, as my 20s. So we have this thing with age where a lot of us are taught that as you age, things get worse. It's like in our culture. No one wants to age. The older you are, the worse it's going to get. And so there is this belief. And I can imagine, like, I love this idea of saying, well, what if the intention is in a year from now, I feel younger, right? Instead of you'll be older, but can you feel younger? So for someone with that intention saying, okay, a year from now, Dawson, I want more energy than I have. But then they're thinking, I'm in my 60s, or I'm in my 30s, or they're creating these excuses of, well, it doesn't happen like that. It's harder for me because I am much older than Jessica or Dawson or whatever your age is. Because there are 20-year-olds who act very old, like you said. So I'd like to use that example and would love to do some tapping of how we can feel younger next year.
Oh, I'd love to do that. And let go of any set points that hold us stuck where we are now. Yeah, sounds good.
Great.
So the first thing to do is to have a clear aspiration and get really clear about what that is. I recommend you write this down. You can write it on a device, you can write it on a phone or a pad, a tablet, or a computer, but I recommend you actually write it down by hand, because research shows that when you write things by hand with a pen or a pencil, it's engaging different parts of the brain and engaging more parts of the brain than otherwise would be engaged by typing on a computer. The second thing we've learned in EEG research is that you need to centralize it. By centralizing it, I mean you need to focus on what it tastes like, touch, hearing, vision. Every single sense needs to be engaged, because this is activating different parts of the brain behind your vision. So I recommend you write this down. So what you're going to write down is your vision for your body, your well-being, your energy levels a year from now in sensual detail. So let's start with the number one, that vision a year from now. So that vision is, and so picture that vision. I'll give you a moment just to write that down. You can pause the video if you want to, and then you can pick it up in a moment if you need more time. If you can do it in a few seconds, then get that vision really clear. Now, project yourself there. You're there now. Congratulations. Well done. You're standing there with me a year from now and saying, Dawson, I met my goal. I'm there. Yay! Okay, so we're celebrating. You are there now, right now. Your brain can't tell the difference. So be there now. Okay, be there now. So it's no longer a future goal. It's what happened in the past. You're looking at yourself and you're there. Now, what does it look like? Look around you. What do you see? Just write down 2 or 3 things you're seeing. What are you hearing now. Maybe you're hearing appreciation. Maybe there's certain words that you're hearing, certain sounds you're hearing. Write those down. Just use your fingertips and just touch your body and notice what you're feeling. What does your body feel like right now? Feel your breath flowing in and out. Feel how easy it is as you touch yourself. And write down what it feels like so magically to be in this new space, in this new body. What does it taste like, and what does it smell like? Taste and smell are very closely related to each other. Our sense of smell is our oldest of our senses, and so smell and taste what it's like. How does it taste in your mouth? Are there any special tastes associated with this state? And are there any scents? Are there any smells? Pleasant smells, wonderful smells, smell of fresh skin, fresh hair, fresh air. So now you're in this new space, looking back on your accomplishment in the past year, and you've got every single sense engaged in being there. Now, here is the vital part of doing this that you're learning here on the Tapping World Summit that you aren't going to learn anywhere else. We teach this in tapping, and it's important to go do this next step. Notice any objections in your mind to that scenario. Are you hitting a set point? I could never bench press 200 pounds. I could never exercise twice a day. I could never be that vibrantly healthy. I could never spend 3 months in Hawaii. I could never do that mountain biking trail. I'm too old. I'm too young. I'm too out of shape. I'm too blah, 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 blah. Our minds give us endless supply of garbage, trash talk. In Hawaii, they call it stink talk. Our minds give us all this monkey mind, stink talk, and just all these objections to our dreams. So notice that mental limitation, and then notice how it feels in your body. You're tuning now into your set points, your limitations, and usually they're rooted deep in the body. They're rooted somewhere. You're going to feel tension in your shoulders, or tension in your throat, or you're going to feel pressure in your heart. You'll feel pain in your lower back. Tune into your body now and find the physical location of those objections. And now we're going to tap them away.
Yes, so, please.
Found those objections. You found where they are in your body. And now we'll do some tapping. Start with the side of hand point, small intestine meridian.
Do we measure anything?
Oh, yeah. Let's go ahead and give that physical sensation and intensity score from 0 to 10. So 0 means no intensity, it's gone. 10 is the strongest possible level of intensity you can imagine. Great. So start tapping. Tune into that part of your body and really get in touch with what it feels like. And then say, even though my body feels like this.
Even though my body feels like this.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Even though my body feels like this.
Even though my body feels like this.
I deeply and completely accept me.
I deeply and completely accept me.
Even though my body feels like this.
Even though my body feels like this.
I'm safe now.
I'm safe now.
I'm doing my best.
I'm doing my best.
Top of the head, that's your governing meridian. My body feels like this.
My body feels like this.
Really tune into that physical feeling. Then tap where your eyebrows meet the bridge of your nose. Keep your eyes open. Tune into the feeling. My body feels like this.
My body feels like this.
Tap on the side of your eyes. There are parts of me
There are parts of me
that aren't in agreement with my goals.
that aren't in agreement with my goals.
Tap under your eyes. Parts of me that resist.
Parts of me that resist.
Parts of me that aren't going along with these goals.
Parts of me that aren't going along with these goals.
Under your nose, parts of me that might sabotage these goals.
Parts of me that might sabotage these goals.
Chin. Parts of me that are content to be the way they are.
Parts of me that are content to be the way they are.
Collarbone point. Parts of me that have served me in the past.
Parts of me that have served me in the past,
Under your arms, but maybe don't serve me right now.
but maybe don't serve me right now.
Side of the hand. I feel those parts of me.
I feel those parts of me.
They've been doing their best to keep me safe.
They've been doing their best to keep me safe,
But I now have other ways of keeping myself safe.
but I know I have other ways of keeping myself safe.
I have other ways of meeting my goals.
I have other ways of meeting my goals.
I have other ways of creating well-being.
I have other ways of creating well-being,
And I'm able to release those parts now.
and I'm able to release those parts now.
I'm able to release the energy in those parts
I'm able to release the energy of those parts
and integrate them into my whole self.
and integrate them into my whole self.
Tap on the top of the head. Releasing the energy bound up in those old parts.
Releasing the energy bound up in those old parts.
Eyebrow points. I'm integrating them into myself.
I'm integrating them into myself.
Side of the eyes. Releasing stuck energy bound up in those old parts.
Releasing stuck energy bound up into those old parts.
Under your eye. And integrating them into my whole self.
And integrating them into my whole self.
Under your nose. Releasing the set points in those parts.
Releasing the set points in those parts.
Chin. Releasing the energy in those set points.
Releasing the energy in those set points.
Collarbone points. So I can integrate all the parts of myself into the whole.
So I can integrate all of those parts of myself into the whole.
Under the arms. And as I integrate all those parts of self into the whole,
And as I integrate all those parts of myself into the whole,
side of hand, releasing all my stuck energy,
releasing all the stuck energy,
breathing it out,
breathing it out,
tapping it out,
tapping it out,
releasing it from my mind, heart, and body.
releasing it from my mind, heart, and body.
I feel my full potential.
I feel my full potential.
I integrate my full potential.
I integrate my full potential.
And I love and accept myself.
And I love and accept myself.
Let's tap for a moment on the optional points. There are quite a few optional points to use the EFT, and we'll tap on a few of those now. So we'll tap, starting with the wrist point, and just go about an inch or a couple of centimeters down from the crease in your wrist over here, and tap on that point. No need to say anything, just focus on your body and feel yourself releasing. Flip your hand around, tap on the back of your wrist. Then rub right below your collarbones. Really dig into your ribs there a little bit, release any stuck old energy. There are a bunch of lymph nodes in there that we can flush out by rubbing, massaging. Then find the lowest rib and just dig your fingers in below your lowest rib. That's on your liver meridian,
In the front of your body,
the front of your body, yeah. Just dig in below your rib cage and release any old material in there. It could be a little bit tender. That's just fine. And now put your hands on your thighs, like if you have pockets in your pants, right where your pockets would be. Tap on the pocket point. It's what the ancient acupuncture scrolls call it, the pocket point. Not really. And then there's a point which I call tap yourself happy, and that's on the leg. It's right above your ankle bone, about 4 inches or 10 centimeters above your ankle bone, and just tap on one side there, both sides of the calf, 4 inches above your ankle bones. Again, just releasing any limitations, any set points, anything that disagrees with your well-being. We're not trying to crush those parts or get rid of those parts. We're just loving those parts, but releasing all the energy stuck in them. So other ankle now.
This would look funny if someone just joined the call. Just silently.
What are we doing?
What are you guys doing? Got the ankle point.
Okay. Good. One more time on the side of hand point. That's the psychological reversal point. The first point we always tap on in every tapping routine. And then take a deep breath. Now tune back into your body. Think about your future goal. Think of yourself already being there. And notice how your body feels. Do you have any resistance to that? Do you have any pockets of resistance that are still there, any set points that still remain? The chances are they've gone way down. And get your new number. How strong is your number now? How strong is your resistance to those goals on a scale of 0 to 10? Chances are it's gone way down. We know from research it usually goes down 60 to 80% in that first round of tapping. There's a lot more you can do beyond that point, but that just gives you a little bit of an idea of how to use the body and the messages of your body to find what parts of you don't agree with your goals and then tap them away. The next stage beyond that would be to go and work with a practitioner and then find the events in your childhood that caused or that triggered those physical feelings. You're going to tap those away and they'll almost always remove them. But that's going way beyond this into childhood trauma. We don't want to do that on a call like this, but that's the next phase of this. Just working with the body alone is often enough. If it isn't enough, go work with a practitioner and focus on early childhood events.
Well, you're giving us a great process here. I hear a lot of times people are like, I love tapping, but I haven't incorporated it into my life because I'm not quite sure what to do. And here you're saying, this is the process. Get clear on what you want and work backwards. And instead of having denial that we have these limitations or not setting goals at all, you're actually setting that intention and then almost getting excited about the resistance. Going, oh, this is okay. Well, this is what I have to tap on, and being able just to feel better. And I know the difference is you can say the objection like, oh, well, people my age shouldn't do that or whatever it is. You say it, but it doesn't feel true. And that's when you know you got it because you don't feel the anxiety in your body anymore. It's just a thought. It's just a saying. And you can actually take a step back and go, is that really true for me? Do I really believe that?
Yeah, question your limiting beliefs. And all these body sensations, all these limitations, these set points, we originally installed them early in our childhoods to protect us. And so they were protected parts of our psyche at a certain point. So that part of your psyche has been taking care of you, protecting you, doing its best for many, many years. And so we're not trying to get rid of these parts of ourselves. We're trying to let go of the fear they usually encode and then integrate them into ourselves. I worked with one young male dancer. He was maybe in his late teens, and he was a competitive dancer, and he had trouble with his high kicks. He couldn't kick he could kick pretty high. He kicked in every dimension. He could move, had a huge range of motion, but his front kicks to the front were really shallow, and he couldn't go very high. So I measured how high he could get, and it turned out that there was part of him that believed subconsciously that if he kicked higher than that, he was going to injure himself. he was going to pull a muscle, strain a tendon, and he was going to be out of commission for his dancing career. We tapped on that fear. So again, that part of his psyche actually thought it was helping him. Now, it was actually hindering him. It was limiting his performance, but that part of his psyche thought, I'm helping him not get injured. So we tapped and we reassured that part of the psyche, and we let go of that fear, and he was able to then integrate that into his personality structure again. That fear was no longer there. He welcomed that part of himself back into himself, and he was moving forward with a sense of wholeness. We then tested his free kicks again, and they were 13 inches higher.
Oh.
After tapping away the limitation. So, yeah.
Wow.
Big difference.
I love that you talked about reassurance, like letting ourselves know that it's safe for us to reach our goals, because that's what tends to happen. We have these limiting beliefs. Now, as we start to make some movement and we feel like we're making progress, is there some kind of positive tapping or a way of tapping of just that reassurance of keeping us in that state of knowing it's safe to shine, to succeed, to kick high, to feel younger? What are your thoughts around that?
Usually, when I work with people, and we train hundreds of practitioners every year, we train them in EFT, and we train them actually to really listen to people they're working with and not to do any positive tapping until the client, the person, until their psyche is ready to go there. Very often people get into distress, they start doing EFT, they start to have all these old feelings processing, and it is a big emotional piece to digest. And novice practitioners, people new to EFT, they'll say, oh, this person's in pain, they're in distress, let's do some positive tapping and help them. And that's exactly the wrong thing to do, because this person needs to have a catharsis, that energy needs to move through them. If you tap positive with them, it's just going to abort the process, and they will not really let go of all that material buried in the subconscious. So when we train new practitioners, we really have to make sure they don't go to the positive quickly. Now, when we fully plumbed, when we fully cleared out all of the material in the basement, in the sewer, in this well of trauma that many of us are carrying around in our subconscious, when you tap through all that, when that's all released, then very naturally the client goes positive. And so usually we're much more focused on removing the obstacles than we are on positive tapping, which usually has the effect of stopping the person's progress rather than assisting it. So you can do some positive tapping just to state your goals and affirm your goals. It's much more useful to delve into the stuff going on down below. The one place I use positive tapping myself every day, or at least content-free tapping, is when I wake up in the morning. I don't want to wake up in the morning and be the person I was yesterday, the best person I was yesterday. The best person I was yesterday is not the person I am in this present moment. So I wake up in the morning, Jessica, and I do some general tapping every morning, and I tap and just release anything and everything left over from the year before, the week before, the day before. So I can be fresh and new and hit my peak potential today, because my peak potential today might be a lot higher. My level of energy might be a lot higher today than even it was yesterday. And so we want to unlock our creativity and imagination and be in the moment. And that means tapping away the stuff from the past. So I tune into my body. I feel any feelings of limitation. I tap and release those. I really just be with myself where I am wordlessly. And then usually after that round of tapping, I've released a ton just silently, subconsciously, and I now naturally rise into this super happy, super positive state. So tap away at those things that are holding you back. Usually, naturally, our psyches will pop into that brain function and we'll feel much better.
Right. And so I imagine if we are looking for that little bit of reassurance, we feel like we've made some progress, that is an invitation to go, well, what else is here that's creating the hesitation or the fear? And so focusing on tapping on any other aspects of those beliefs. Because I have found that we don't just, sometimes we clear things all at once, and other times there's different aspects. We clear an aspect of it, and then there's another layer that pops up that looks a little bit different, and then we can address that to bring ourselves to this place of feeling this reassurance that it is safe for us to have that high kick or to reach our goals next year.
Yeah. And it is layers. You're absolutely right. It's layer after layer after layer. I've been doing EFT for over 20 years now, and energy medicine for another 35 years before that. And I'm still finding things in myself. I mean, I did a class with people, some advanced students this last weekend, and I found I still had some issues from way back that I was triggered by. So you keep on peeling the layers of the onion, finding little subtle limitations in yourself, and then tapping those away and integrating them. And don't be impatient with yourself. I mean, here you are on the summit. We're all having this amazing experience right now here, and you're going to clear a whole lot of stuff, and you're going to tap along, and you'll feel wonderful. And know it's a process, and be patient with yourself. There may be parts of yourself that feel stuck and don't move right away. Just let yourself have the time it takes to heal. And don't think, we are trying to get rid of those parts of ourselves that are holding us back. We're trying to integrate them in the whole. They are energy structures, and when we release the energy in those structures, we can bring them back into ourselves. And for example, you might have ambivalence. For example, just say you want to buy a house. I want to own a house, so I want to buy a house. So one part of you has the goal of buying a house. Another part of you says, yeah, but the property market's really high right now. What if there's a crash and I lose all my equity? I'm underwater on my mortgage. Another part of you says, yeah, what if I'm tied down by this house and I can't move when I want to move? What I'll have this big payment every month, blah, blah, blah. So we have all these voices in our heads, and they're trying to take care of us. They're trying to help us. So we don't want to get rid of those cautious voices. We want to remove any fear in them, and then we get all the benefit of that wisdom coming into the whole. Then we move ahead with what NLP calls congruence. We're congruent beings. We're then moving toward our goals with every single part of our psyche in agreement with that goal.
It's exciting. I love that process. And also, I think it's important to note that I am happy that you said that you still were triggered by something and you worked through it. I think it's important to know that these emotions are part of the human experience. And we can also get caught up in this idea of being broken and then being healed and thinking that one day there'll be a moment where nothing ever triggers us. Right? But we do this.
Call me the moment that happens, Jessica.
Yes,
please.
I'll be glowing. I will be literally glowing. It doesn't happen, and I think it's important to say that because sometimes we think, "Oh, but am I enough? Because I'm still triggered by this, or I still have things to work on, so I can't be happy until I've cleared all those things." And that becomes a very limiting belief when feeling these emotions, working through things at our own pace is part of the human experience and it never ends. So let's find some joy within the process. Let's find some excitement and actually enjoy going, oh, this is triggering me. Maybe instead of the extra judgment, what a great invitation for me to let go of something that might have been running me unconsciously. And I just think that ease and that gentleness is so important. And it's why I love tapping, because you can do that with the tapping. It can feel easier and you can have that gentle, loving approach.
Oh, you get really excited after a while when something new pops up. Look, I found something you want to tap on.
Exactly. And so as we're doing all this work, we are changing our set points when it comes to our energy, when it comes to our health, because letting these things go, it boosts our energy, it boosts our health. So it's wonderful we've covered so much from surgery and recovery to now this amazing process. So I want to thank you so much for taking the time today and bringing us through this amazing journey. I know a lot of people had a lot of aha moments. Any last final words before we wrap up?
I love that we're a community doing this together. I mean, the Tapping World Summit is our big tapping party of the year. And there are hundreds of thousands of us tapping together, intending together, and growing together. And the collective energy of that, Jessica, is really phenomenal. I'm doing some research now on this phenomenon called emotional contagion, where we look at how emotions spread from person to person to community to community. And we are producing huge emotional contagion in the world right now. Positive emotional contagion. We're the positivity virus. We're the happiness. We're the happiness thing spreading all over the world. And I just love we're doing this together. So there's power in doing this together. And as we're tapping, we're reinforcing each other's intentions, and we're part of this whole global community. So I know when I meditate in the morning, I tune in and I can feel how there's far more than just me. And when we are struggling with our issues sometimes, we tend to really isolate and think that this is my problem. But really, we are healing our problem in the context of this global community. It's there for us. And when we relax and just move with our own growth and move as part of this global shift in consciousness, we're part of a much bigger movement in human awareness, in consciousness, than we can ever imagine. So I'm so thrilled during the Tapping Summit that we're all doing this together, and it's reinforcing that we're all part of the healing of our collective psyche and of our planet together. And this leads us to a sense of profound responsibility for this bigger picture we're all part of. And when I heal myself, and I'm no longer a traumatized person, a limited person, I'm an unlimited person, I'm an untraumatized person, full of love, I'm spreading that around me. I'm an agent of emotional contagion for everyone around me and for the whole planet. So that's what we're doing right now, and that's profoundly exciting.
It is. Thank you so much for creating that space for all of us and for everyone who listened. Thank you so much, Dawson.
It's a joy.